Hey everyone, it's Lennon, and today I wanted to, I don't know, I really liked making my own tarot deck, which I'll leave that video up in the cards. It was kind of like a pre-Raphaelite painting tarot deck that I made for myself just because I was like really wanting to get into the art of the pre-Raphaelites and that kind of an era. And that's actually not my favorite genre, I'll say, of art. My favorite genre of art is probably Baroque. This real intense imagery that really fills me with I don't know, it just fills me with good vibes. And a lot of the paintings in the Baroque era are really dark. They use a style in the Baroque called Chiaroscuro, and that just means there's a play on the light and the dark in the painting, and I'll show you some examples. Now, I don't know if we're going to look at all of them, but I did something a little crazy. Because I loved the whole process of making the tarot deck, I decided to do myself an oracle deck the same kind of way, using, Wiki Commons images, like free, fair use images from the Baroque period, and put some I guess, titles on the bottoms of the cards, and tried to link the imagery of the card to a word. And then it ended up being such a process for me in terms of art and in terms of like wordplay, that I ended up writing some long but some mostly short poems for each card. And I went through the whole process like I did my tarot deck, and it just was so fun that I had to share it. And to leave, I guess, leave some kind of tips as to how I go about this process, because I didn't really go into that in the other video. But really, it's really, really simple. If you get on makeplayingcards.com, you can upload images, and they give you parameters around the card, like a bleed area, and they have so many shapes and sizes of cards that you can potentially use, all kinds of cardstock. Now, I am a riffle shuffler, so there needs to be some flexibility in my cards. Otherwise, if there's too thick and I can't riffle shuffle, it just tends to hurt my hands, because that's just what I'm used to as far as muscle memory when it comes to tarot, decks in general. So anyway, the process was really, really simple, and I did use fair use, which if you get on Wikipedia Commons, it's like Wikipedia's image archive, and you can find a lot of images that are either safe to use, or, you can kind of research copyright laws, where the art was from, but mostly they'll have a lot of fair use images from various artists that lived way back in the day. And you could probably make tons and tons of art that way. Like in terms of decks, especially if it's just going to be for self, it's a really easy process. You get it printed. I think this printing costed me probably about $15 to $20, and that was including shipping it to me. But I only did one deck, and a lot of creators I've seen lately have used that platform to make these types of, art decks and sell them themselves, and you can sell them on that platform for, I guess, for a few royalties, I'll call them. So anyway, I wanted to show you a few cards, and then maybe share a poem or two from a couple of cards that I'll probably draw some cards at the end of this, and that's how we'll map out which poems to share. And the artist that I tended to use for this oracle, because I really wanted an oracle that I could use for shadow work that I made myself, and I really wanted something that would really play on the light and the dark, so that I could, see what would be in the dark, what's in the shadows, and then what also is in the light, what side of the face, kind of really try to get divinatory with it. And so I love Caravaggio. He's the main artist that I used in this whole deck. There are a couple of other Baroque artists in here scattered around, but for the most part, it's going to be Caravaggio's art, because he just has a certain style that I am drawn to for some reason, and I always have been. It just reminds me of living in those types of drafty stone castles, and that's like my personal aesthetic would be that, running around stone castles, and it's really cold. You always have to be bundled up, and there's candle torches on all of the walls. That's really where my heart lies. So I really loved this style of painting for those reasons, because it just reminds me of that. And the font was not really the best. I don't like this font. I really tried to go with something Baroque, but when you look up, and I'll use the term Gothic for lack of a better term just in this video, but that's not technically what this font is, but I think anyone who hears that would know what I'm talking about. It can be hard to read when you type it out in a font, if it's not written in like an ancient manuscript. So anyway, back to this. Caravaggio was an artist that, I think that at the height of his painting, when he would be actually painting the majority of these, is probably about the turn into the 15th century. So 1590 to 1600 is when he would be probably from like age 20 to 30, and he would probably be doing the most of his work then. So the turn of the century to the 15th century. And I really tried to use words that I could pull from. Like, for example, I'm rambling, I'm sorry. For example, this card I called Transformation, because, I mean, we could have gone on so much imagery with that particular word, but I loved the fact that this is a huge, I mean, I zoomed in so much with this image that I just wanted the old lady and the young lady, because I feel like as we go through life, we do have stages, we have cycles that we, you know, it's like flowing like this, and I wanted that represented in the card, especially in terms of my mother and crone work. I tend to work more, I don't want to say more, I do have a triple goddess work in my practice, but my maiden time is mostly like giddy inner child work, figuring out things, new things that I like to do, like new styles of art that I want to try, new things that I want to try that make me excited. That's what my maiden time is. But then my mother time is, I really go in depth with my mother time. As far as like protection and finding new spells, and that's the time I'm mostly writing in my Book of Shadows, and as far as like my organized Book of Shadows. And then my crone time is my most sacred time, because that is like an ancestor time, a blood mother's time. I think about death more at the turn of my crone time, and asking myself those hard questions. Some may say that those are hard questions. Getting in touch with my older self, the old self that will be me. Even if I were to die tomorrow, I want to get in touch with the potential of my crone self. And I think that is imperative to my practice, and I love it. So I really wanted the play here on how her face is pointing this way and hers is pointing this way, and they just looked like the same being, but different aspects of one person, and that really spoke to me. Now, as you can see, you have to be careful with certain images, because if you zoom too much, then they tend to blur out. Now, with Chiaroscuro, the art style that is that, it doesn't really show up that much, but I have since tweaked my account on Make Playing Cards to eradicate some of the cards that really did turn out kind of blurry. So, but I like how, I like his expression on his face, and how it looks like he's zoned out, so I named it Intuition. Thought that was pretty cool. I love Caravaggio's ability to capture the elderly in his paintings, and he does use a lot of biblical references in his painting. I do, you know, like the first card I showed, Transformation, was Judith. So, but I do love his ability to capture those really, like, real elderly people, and just capture their essence, and I think that that's beautiful. And I named this Achievement because he seems to be still like writing down, and that's how we are going to remember it. Our legacy is in our memories, and at the end of life, we want to be able to resort back to those memories. And I feel like when we just go off imagery here, he could be writing down his memoirs, or he could be writing down some memories that he doesn't want to forget in a few weeks. He doesn't want to be able to, he doesn't want his old mind to be able to forget that, so he's writing it down. Whatever achievement he may may have. This is a wonderful painting if you see the whole of it. It's I believe I think this one particularly is called The Fortune Teller, and she's reading this soldier's palm. And I love the use of like painting fabrics. I've never been able to do that well, and so I'm just enraptured when I see the old painters, like the old masters, doing it so well. I just don't understand it. So I named this card Enchantment because she seems to be reading his palm, but then this figure is enchanted with her ability. It's almost like she may have said something that really resonated, and this soldier just could not believe it, I thought that was excellent. His use of, I don't know, facial expressions in the males in all of his art, it calls to me too. There's a blankness with the males that pulls me to them, because as the feminine, we want to nurture and, we want to love and hug and make them smile, right? But the man is all about the male is all about control and stability. And there's just so much going on in their minds that it makes sense that they wouldn't be all smiles like the feminine would be. And anyway, with him looking this way, and I know that it may not be the way that like the tarot works, but for me, it looked like he was looking back. So I liked that he's remembering something, and remembrance, that takes a lot out of me in terms of my crone time. When I think about past memories, I also like to think about, well, my best memories may have involved someone. Let's say they involve someone, but that person's memories, that person's like best memory to them may be different than the one that includes me. So I like to think of like all angles of that as well. Isolation. I love his ability to capture the essence of emotions. It's just so good. This is actually Fusili. My absolute favorite painting is this Nightmare painting, and it just looks so drowsy and Stoker-esque that just it speaks to me on especially as someone who has dealt with insomnia and sleep problems due to my anxiety disorders, that this Nightmare painting is just like exactly what it feels like to have something sitting on your chest. But I call this procrastination because that feeling, and you're kind of bored and you have a whole list of shit to do, but you just can't seem to make yourself do it. That feels like this, like you just want to slide off your bed and not really do anything. You just want to procrastinate about it and not really do the things on your honey to-do list. This I love because, and I want to put a disclaimer out before we get in any more into this deck, that there probably will be, I think there is, some artistic nudity in this. So just to know that. But this monk he looks like he's asking for directions, or he's asking for something. Maybe he's petitioning something, and like you see those people that come up to you with a clipboard and they want you to sign for something. And I love that concept, that the bravery that comes along with that. A lot of people are anxious about going up to people like when they need something and need a petition done, but I think it's highly brave to go up to strangers and ask and just be like, look, I'm passionate about this, and I'm not afraid of that. And I love that. So I named this contribution. I love this term idolization because growing up in a Judo-Christian kind of a background, or having a Judo-Christian background, my Christianity was so severe with things like idolatry. And you can't have statues in your yard. You can't have certain things that, like certain sit-around things that would represent Jesus. We had so many sermons in my childhood about idolatry and how there's a fine line between wanting to represent the love you have for your religion and idolatry. And it's just like, it was damned if you do, damned if you don't. And for me, I'm a maximalist, and idolization is like my highest form of my spiritual practice. I am a very visual person. If I need a tarot deck on my altar, if I need a statue of Mary on my altar, or if I need these bones on my altar to really represent something that I'm actively working with in my practice, that would be considered, like, they're considered idols. But I love that part of my practice and my rituals, so I had to have a card that represented that as well. Tradition. I love how she seems to be telling them a story. Comprehension. You just see like these lovely elderly monks in these Caravaggio's art is just intoxicating to me, and he's just enraptured in this text. I love it. These are saints. You can tell by the faint halos around them. And so, like I said, a lot of biblical references. But I think that calls to me because I have since severed myself from my childhood Christianity and have since started healing with that. And I think that's why this art calls to me so much, is it's become a part of my healing process. Confirmation. Like signing something, confirming something. Illumination. This image actually reminded me of when we put the flashlights under our face and we tell a ghost story. There's a certain spookiness with that, but there's also a relief. Like, it's not totally dark, so it's like we do need to concentrate on the one spark of light that we do have, because it could be all black. We couldn't see anything, and then we would really be terrified. And so it's about seeing even the tiny spark. Prioritization. Because, I mean, it's like he's just not paying attention. Like, the city's on fire behind him, and he's just drinking his wine or whatever. I think he needs to prioritize. Now, I offset this image for a reason, because I do like the black space behind Narcissus. But in mythology, Narcissus loves himself so much, and it wasn't a thing until he saw his reflection, and then he loved himself so much he just couldn't stop. And I love that story. But it is about taking the time to notice yourself, notice and listen to yourself. And Narcissus, it plays to me on not being excessive with your love for self and not being repressive. Absorption. Now, mirrors in this old art had powerful symbolism. It's especially in terms of women. The mirror was synonymous with the moon, and therefore the moon cycles, and therefore reflective, like scrying almost. Anyway, there's just so much powerful symbolism in terms of like psychological impact that the painting would have because it contained a mirror. I named it Absorption because she is naked, or fairly naked in this, and looking at her own reflection, it seemed to me like a play on vanity. I call it my magic mirror. I've said this before in a previous video, but it's a full body mirror on a stand, and it wobbles. It's very, very old. But every time I look in that mirror, I like what I see, and that doesn't necessarily always happen with all the mirrors or reflective surfaces in my house. So it's really, this was a play on vanity, and how there's also lines that we need to not become too, our head to become too big. Manifestation. This kind of reminds me of like a Three of Pentacles energy, the work we put in to manifest, and I liked that he was in the throes of working. A nice play on candlelight here. A very nice play. This is actually the Morai sisters and Perseus. I think it's Perseus. Correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, I named this Contemplation. Because he seems to be battling with himself about something. You know, do I steal the eye? What do I do? And I think that there's just something in his expression that made me think. And he's in the throes of jumping off something, kind of like the Fool energy for me. But it is about contemplation, contemplating what your choices are and what they need to be, most likely. This turned out real yellow, but I love that she's about to breastfeed. I wanted it represented for the mother aspect, and not that that's nurture. That's not all nurture is like mothering. It's kind of like the Empress card for me. That's just a keyword that I can bounce off of, but that's not all that it is. But there was a fabulous energy that I felt with this card. This is also a play on young versus old and generation aspect, crone aspect. The ability that the elderly have to teach us something, and this little child looked enraptured with the story, or enraptured with what this crone was doing. And I think that's important. Now, this love letter that this girl is reading filled me with such sense of longing. There's a painting that I absolutely adore by Millet, and it's called Mariana, and it's based off of a Shakespeare play. But how I learned about Mariana was through a Tennyson poem that speaks of Mariana losing her dowry at sea when her dad shipwrecked, and the husband left her, or her fiance left her because she couldn't pay, and she had to go into a nunnery, but she really didn't want to, and she was sexually frustrated. And I just, thinking about that just fills me with such sadness. But anyway, I named it Petition because it's a letter, and it, you know, maybe she's finding out something that she needs to do, something that is, somebody's calling forth something to her, and she has to respond. Interference. I love that this is actually Salome with John the Baptist's head, severed head over here. Again, I loved the play of the elderly with the young, and how this figure seems to be whispering something in Salome's ear. Or maybe it's Judith. Maybe it's Judith. I like the term Salome for this particular mythos. But it seemed like there was some interaction here. And her expression made me think that whatever this figure is saying is just interference. It's like static. It's not actually helping. So that's always something to look out for as well when you are in relationships with people. I loved this because in the whole of the painting, they're acting out a scene, and like a scene from a play, and this person is trying to get up off the couch because he's afraid of the figure in the doorway over here. It's pretty cool when I think about it. But I loved that he seems to be facing this way but jumping. So it's about the redirection that we have to take sometimes to when we're in the throes of something, we sometimes need to redirect even our thought patternings. Now, I call this flotation because this card made me think that this girl, or this figure, is floating on a surface of something. And even if we kind of look like it in a landscape way, there was such a line here that I felt that it was about free flowing, like floating, and that feeling that I get when I'm on my back floating, like in the lake. Foundation. I imagine that's like a bag of something that he's using as foundation for the floor, and how that's the most important part of anything we do is the ground, and we work from there. Now this is such a nice figure of this person being so vulnerable and showing off his wound, but then this person putting his finger inside of it. It filled me with a, like, how do you expect me to keep being vulnerable if I'm going to keep getting attacked? And it's about letting the demonstration play out without putting forth an input, letting the demonstration sit with you before you respond, and how important that is in today's society. Avocation. I love this. Protection. This is actually Bacchus. So this Dionysus-like character, like inventing wine, right? And how he's squeezing the grapes out. I just love his facial expression and his rosy cheeks to mean that maybe he's already intoxicated and he's just gonna keep making the wine. Like Lucy in that I Love Lucy episode, she's just gonna keep stomping on the grapes. So it's about the invention and getting the throes of that as well. Perception. Illusion. I like that they're playing cards, and this figure actually looks like he's trying to read somebody else's cards, but it's all about interaction with people too. I found that to be fascinating, is that a lot of, one person, a lot of them are a play on how we have relationships as people. This picture was so I don't know, it just filled me with such wanderlust, because he seemed to be looking at the globe, of course, for maybe a scientific discovery. He was like really trying to be maybe something in the liberal sciences, but navigation was such a strong word that was pulled out of my intuition with this image. And here's nature, the counteract of nurture. And there was a sense of like, I don't know, this kind of looked to me like protecting and standing one's ground and using a staff as a weapon. As primitive as that would be as a weapon, it's not about the weapon, it's about your determination to protect. This is Prometheus. Yeah, this is Prometheus, and the eagle is eating his liver. But the darkness in this, and how when you really, really look at this image, you can't see anything but the hand. You focus on the hand and the chest, and I think that's so nice. This is actually from like a very zoomed in portion of a Bosch painting, and I just love this figure of the angels, and it seems to be like the way to heaven is through this tunnel. I think that was where Bosch was going with it, and I called this ascension because ultimately, no matter what, however, if it's just a long tunnel we have to fly up, it's about what we're going to do to gain ascension. Contentment. He uses this figure a lot. He uses a lot of live models in his paintings, and it was always fascinating to me to see this figure represent multiple paintings. Now, there's so much more to this painting on the outside of this card, but when I zoomed it in, it looked like she was holding the wall up and squeezing herself into something. And it's about the resilience it takes to do that, to not be scared of living in the box, but maybe it's about fighting to get out of the box. Harmonization. Love music. Now this is my scrying card. I had to have something that represented scrying because that's like, I don't know. Tarot is like a main form of divination for me. But I love to scry, not necessarily always for divinatory meaning, but just for self. I do it for self a lot. So they're not actually scrying in this image. It just happens to be a black mirror that was in here. It could probably be a photo frame or something, but the dome of the glass and the hand gesture here, like, really soft. It just, I called it transmission. You're gonna look into this and you're gonna see some things. oppression. Again, I felt kind of like Seven of Wands-ish here. Everyone's attacking, and the oppression that we feel. Any groups that we feel oppressed, and that's how it feels. It feels like whether you're helping or hurting, you're still the one that's getting the infliction. And it's about the help, but it is also about the hurt. And you have to take both into account. Estimation. She's estimating how close she can get to the flame before it burns her. This figure's hand gesture coming up like this, it reminded me of kind of like a ritual almost. How we would call upon this, call upon the elements, call upon the four corners, and that's why I called it evocation. Fulfillment. I loved this use of abundance here. The wheat in their hair and the fruit here just called to me on like a abundance, prosperity level, I guess. Exertion. Now, this figure is actually dead in this painting, and this figure is grieving. But when I zoomed in, it really looks like they were both just kind of vegging out, like falling where they lie. And it's that feeling that we have, especially those of us who suffer from anxiety issues. When we've done, even if it to others it may seem like a little in a day, let's just say, or I have exerted so much emotional energy to a situation that by the time I get back home, I have to nap because my brain's fried. That happens sometimes, and it's pretty excruciating, but you do have to rest. Now there's a lot going on in this card. This seemed to be another kind of a wands battle going on, and all these soldiers and these hands holding, not in a love way, but in a I just have to grab you because we have to all be fighting. We all have to be fighting right now. I had to have a card from the Baroque era, and it took me a while to find it, but I had to have something that would represent my painting and my doodling and my drawing, because that's like my greatest hobby, and I've called it creation. It looks like she's painting on maybe a piece of hide or a piece of linen, not necessarily canvas. Completion. I loved the fact that I did find a Baroque painting that had a wheel in it. I loved that, and how it's about the turn, and it's about how, like, especially if you think in terms of tarot, the 10s aren't the end necessarily, you're just starting back over. And I want to shuffle and pull a couple of cards that I want to share the poem that I wrote to go along with those cards that I pulled. Probably 3 or 4. And just to let you know that there are 47 cards in this deck. They shuffle really well. I hope that y'all be able to see. They bend really well. They're like this linen. Really bendy. I love them. I love where they're not as thick, so they seem to be really thin in the hand, but they don't chip. This particular cardstock doesn't chip on the edges like some of the ones I've had, so I can do this all day and nothing will happen to them. It's kind of like plasticky almost, like real playing cards. Like, I think that's the one I went with because I just wanted them to be durable. Okay. Let's pull 3 cards from this stack over here. Ooh, contribution. You may not be able to give everything, but everyone can give something. I love that. Next. Intuition. Without reasoning, within you seek. Without knowledge, within you greet. And see, some of them are really short. Confirmation. Ooh. Compress, comply, rules, rely, guess, apply, tools, deny. Ooh, foundation. A good foundation is solid and true. You cannot build on a house made of stew. Lay down your bricks, for you have miles to go. Up higher the ever, your power will grow. Maybe one more, y'all. Ooh, I love this card. Accept your inner beauty, recognize your inner strength, and absorb the power of you. Okay. I hope that you enjoyed this little look at my oracle. I will leave some links to the Make Playing Cards website below. I hope that everyone gets into the throes of craftiness and makes their own decks and shares them on their channel. And if you do, let me know in the comments below, because I would love to check it out. Even if it's just something that you won't sell one day, you know, you just wanted to do it for self. I still think it's fascinating. I love to craft and do all kinds of things with art. So I hope to see everyone again. Much love.